Hello everybody and welcome back to more political chatter. In this video we will be talking about the former governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, and how he has just announced that he is running for Senate. This comes as a huge surprise to literally everybody. His announcement today was not previously known or really speculated. He had actually completely ruled it out previously, and that is why we can't really trust when politicians rule out running for an office, when they publicly rule it out, because Larry Hogan had done that regarding this very Democratic Senate seat in the state of Maryland. But now he is saying that he's jumping in. He, of course, filed to run and he released an announcement video today. So, who is Larry Hogan? Larry Hogan is the Republican governor, former governor of Maryland. Sorry, he was first elected in 2014 and was reelected in 2018 as a Republican in Maryland. I know that seems very odd, and for good reason. Um, Maryland is a safe Democratic state. It voted, let's see if I could get the presidential election up here. It voted for Biden by 33%, and in 2022, they voted for incumbent Senator Chris Van Hollen by 31.7%. So you can just see how Democratic this state is. But despite that, Larry Hogan was able to win two out of two gubernatorial elections in the state of Maryland. He has a very good track record. I mean, this is a very moderate guy who can absolutely unite the state. That was his main message, and especially his reelection campaign in 2018 was how he united the state of Maryland, even though, on the same ballot in 2018, if we go back, they voted for Ben Cardin, the incumbent senator, by 34.5%, and on that same exact ballot, Larry Hogan won by 12%. So that's what, 47 or 45 or whatever, 47% vote splitting, of people who voted Democratic on the Senate level, but voted for Larry Hogan, a Republican, on the gubernatorial level. So with this unity message, quite frankly, moderate stance on many issues, on most issues, as a Republican, he's known as a neoliberal Republican. He was able to win both of his gubernatorial elections and be one of the most popular governors in the country. I mean, when you are a Republican in a safe Democratic state, you can bet that you will be an extremely popular governor, and consistently he ranked as one of the most popular. But in 2022, I don't know if he was term limited or what, or if he just chose not to run, but he opted not to run, and as you can see, it flipped Democratic by 32%. So just to give you a sense of just how popular Larry Hogan was. So looking at this Senate race, even though this is a safe Democratic state and Larry Hogan is a Republican, it is not any normal announcement, and this could be very close. Obviously, as I was just talking about, Larry Hogan is extremely popular in the state of Maryland. He was elected twice, both times, I believe, the second in his reelection by double digits, even though on that same ballot, Ben Cardin won by 33%. So, even though it is a safe Democratic state on the presidential and gubernatorial and typically the Senate level, this one could get a little close, and this is exactly what Democrats did not want to happen. Obviously, being an extremely popular former governor, well known, again, popular, everyone loves this guy, Larry Hogan will head into the 2024 Senate elections, Senate race in Maryland, with a pretty good standing. I mean, as a Republican, for a Republican in the state of Maryland. But this election will be a question of how partisan voters will be, because of course, as I mentioned, how in 2018 Larry Hogan won by 12%, and on that same ballot, Ben Cardin won by 35%. But voters in general, are much more unlikely to vote, in this case, for a Republican on the Senate level than a Republican on the gubernatorial level. If you're following what I mean, it is a federal office. it affects the entire country. It affects more important laws like whatever immigration, abortion, etc. The federal elections are, of course, overall much more important. A senator is going to have a much more important job for the country than a governor. And, of course, in the Senate and House, that controls the balance of power in Congress. People will want their party to have control in Congress, while in the gubernatorial election, it really doesn't matter in any sort of balance of power. Voters tend to be much less partisan when it comes to gubernatorial elections than Senate and House races. I mean, all you have to do is look at Vermont, where Phil Scott won by some 70%, and Peter Welch won by also some 70%. Phil Scott is a Republican. Peter Welch is a Democrat who ran for Senate. Phil Scott was the Republican running for governor. Anyway, heading into this 2024 race, it could be close. It will be interesting to see where Larry Hogan goes with this. He has support among moderates. Obviously, all Republicans. Republicans will gladly nominate him. Apparently, Mitch McConnell actually tried to get him to run. And then, in the general election, as I said, he will be extremely popular among independents and Republicans. But the question is, how many Democrats could he pull over? Because if we head to, I really wish oh, well, no. Let's see if I could find it. So, looking at this race, we do have the outgoing Ben Cardin. He, of course, that's who I brought up the example for. He won by 35% in 2018, but he is old, he doesn't really do anything, so he is stepping down. And in this Democratic primary, very important, we have two candidates running. Angela Brooks, who is not really all that well known across the country. She is a county executive. And then we have the much more well-known, more financially backed David Schroen, who is a U.S. representative from rather a swing district, Maryland's 6th congressional district. He won by a lot in 2022, but he has had some tight races in Maryland. If it's an open race, it is likely to be pretty close. But so we are seeing this Democratic primary between Brooks and Schroen. It was widely expected that Angela Brooks would kind of not cruise to victory over Schroen, but that she was heavily favored. She had, mainly because of her endorsements. Let's see, yeah, if we could get it here. She had a wide range of Maryland endorsements, while David Schroen, of course, was just backed by U.S. representatives, which really doesn't help all that much in a local, race. It helps, of course, if you're running for president, but not really necessarily in one state. But Angela Brooks has all of these Maryland endorsements, and she is the more progressive, from what I've heard, candidate in this race, and probably the candidate who voters, not to say personality, but who agree with more on policy, who align with more on policy. That would probably be Brooks. However, David Schroen, according to polling, let's see if we have it. Yeah, David Schroen has led every single poll in this Democratic primary in November by 20%, then only by 5%, then by 7%, and then by 11%. So, David Schroen, look at his fundraising here. He has $23 million. Now, this should of course, it was like basically all funded by himself because he's super rich. But this should not only worry Angela Brooks, but more so Larry Hogan in the general election, because David Schroen has this giant war chest of $23 million. Not a war chest that you would typically see for a Senate candidate in a safe blue state like Maryland. So that should be a worrying sign for Hogan. And just comparing 23 million to 5 million for Angela Brooks, Schroen has spent $23 million. Also Brooks has spent $2 million. So I think this primary, is basically over. I think that we will get a nominee Trone. He is leading by a lot in fundraising and leading by a solid amount in polling. So I think that we are likely to get David Trone as the Democratic nominee. So the question is, how will how would Trone fare against Larry Hogan in a you know um, Senate race? I don't think that Larry Hogan could possibly win. I'll just say it. I mean, these margins. It's one thing to say Connecticut, where Chris Murphy won in 2018 by 20%. It's a lot better than 34%. Blumenthal won by only 15 in 2022. It is trending to the right a bit, but Maryland is different. I mean, in 2022, a Republican favored year, Chris Van Hollen winning by 32%. Um, it's going to be extremely hard for Larry Hogan, and I just don't know if he has the money and support to possibly pull out a win in this race. So, um, but that doesn't mean it's not important, because these Senate races in this day and age, each party is fighting for power. We never go into Senate races in 2024 knowing who will win. Majority in the Senate. It is always toss up. So the tiniest amount of money being diverged from other critical states, Ohio, Montana, Arizona, etc., and going to Maryland, a state that they shouldn't have, that the Democrats have shouldn't have been able, or that the Democrats shouldn't have been worried about since the beginning, that can make all the difference. Every dollar that they spend counts. So when you're pulling money from John Tester in Montana, or Sherrod Brown in Ohio, or Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin, and you're putting it towards David Trone in Maryland, who should be winning his race by a lot, in a typical election without Larry Hogan, that really can make all the difference, especially when it's across 3 states like that. So, when you've got to diverge resources to a state that you traditionally don't, and you weren't planning on diverging resources from, um, it doesn't. Obviously doesn't help, but it is not good for the Democrats. I think that they should just put very little into it and just hope that they win, which is very likely. It might be really close, but they should just assume that they've got it in the bag, which can be risky, but I think it's true. So Texas, Florida are going Republican, obviously. Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are all very likely to go Democratic. And Ruben Gallego is favored in the state of Arizona. Tim Shea is favored in the state of Montana very narrowly, so they already have a majority with 51 seats. Sherrod Brown probably stays on in Ohio right now. So you come to Maryland, and the Democrats can really narrow the gap if they hold on to it, which they should, 51 to 49, and then the Republicans, you really squeeze that wiggle room, right? The Republicans barely have any wiggle room in Congress. They can't lose 1 or 2 senators. They have to have all on board if they need to pass something. Obviously, if Larry Hogan wins, that would be huge, but I mean, he's a Mitt Romney type of moderate that you might have to worry about themselves. But still, Democrats are heavily favored here. I don't see Larry Hogan winning, but it can be very important when it comes to resources. So thank you all for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. Leave a comment, and I will see you all next time.